It's interesting how it's still difficult to push record and how I keep making excuses on not doing it, putting it off, right? Privilege admit I have to do this client work, I have to work on my own stuff or this other thing or whatnot. Even though going into this, I decided that I was going to record content every day for 100 days, right? That was what I decided is the most important thing I can do over the next 100 days here. And it's interesting because I am definitely the type of person, where this is, who cares the reason, but in the past, I have always come up with great ideas, said I was going to do things and do like maybe a tenth of them, right? And it's, there's just something that kind of pops up in the brain. It's like, oh, no, do this. Oh, no, do this instead. No, do this instead. I think it goes back to, a misplaced perfection mentality, where I was always rewarded for being smart, having good grades, doing the good things, stuff like that. So I want things to be perfect. I want to like map out every possible scenario, create the perfect plan, do all this, like that stupid stuff that we've all been told, is it like a good plan executed is better than a perfect plan not, or whatever. So it's, and it's so funny because I've seen personally and with other people how often it's the good things that we tend to put off, right? The things that we know are going to be beneficial for our life, like this, creating content. I know this is going to be a big net positive on my business and my career and making money and living the life I want, creating the life I love. Yeah, I still put it off and put it off and put it off. And like even here, like I've been sitting at my computer for 45 minutes now and coming up with different excuses, editing a few more clips from yesterday to get posted and stuff like that, doing all these different things that are not what I consider the most important thing. And at some point, you just have to click record, right? I was just sitting there, I was trying to game plan some of my content, some of the things I was talking about, had a great conversation with a buddy this morning, and was going to add some of those things. And I realized all that is, none of that matters if I don't hit record. So let's just hit record, see what happens, see what comes out, right? Because we can always do more later. We can always fix stuff later. And what's interesting that I've noticed as I've edited these clips, all 3 days so far, I've said a lot of similar things. Most of it doesn't get into these clips, right? Yeah, they're all up on the long form YouTube, which no one's going to watch. That's fine. And even if they do, they will probably forget. And it's okay to continue to say the same things. And it's probably even better that some of these clips and some of these things don't make it out to the world yet in clips, simply because I will be able to say them in a better, clearer, more succinct way, in another week, in another 2 weeks, in another month, another 2 months, right? As I get better at this, as I get better at articulating my thoughts, those clips will sound way better. And even if I said them before, even if I post them before, they'll probably do better that time. And what's interesting is I've noticed a shift in my mindset as I'm editing these clips. And instead of getting down on myself for saying all right too much, or saying too much, or anything like that, I look as like, oh, cool. Like is another one. I've been called out on the like quite a bit. What I've noticed is that I am excited about discovering these mistakes because I am now doing the things, taking the actions where I know I will be able to fix them, both with conscious effort as I go, and then also simply by doing this more, getting those reps in, getting that experience, all that stuff. the likes, the ums, the you knows, those will all kind of start to fade away. Even now today, right, as I am speaking this, talking about this, I'm very much more cognizant of when I say like, right, things like that. It's also becoming a conscious thing before I say it. And I know the times, because here's the thing. I am becoming aware and understand the reason for the likes, ums, and uhs are because I don't know the next sentence, the next word that I want to say, the next direction I want to go. So I use that as kind of filler to let myself think about for a second. When in reality, I can take a pause, depending on, if it's a clip, the pause might get edited out. It also could be something where that pause is actually something that could add effect, right? I think that's something that's very lost now with social media is the importance of pausing, the importance of using inflections and waiting on something, letting something sink in. And it's really, really hard to do that in short form social media. We are so used to the really fast cuts and edits and things like that jump, 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 jump. But I do believe that you can get a lot more out of a conversation when you leave some of those pauses and things like that in there, simply because it gives you that time to reflect. Or when you are the creator of the content, having those pauses, those places where you slow down or speed up or different things like that are all additional information that tells the audience or the listener how to interpret, think about, react to what you just said, right? Right there was a great point. While I was trying to think of something, it was also a great pause because that was a good point for someone to stop and ponder on that for a second, right? Anytime that you're making a controversial point or saying something that goes against what normal people's thinking is, it can be very beneficial to take that pause and let it sink in for a second. Let them take a second and be like, do I believe that? Is that enough evidence to reshape my opinion? Whatever it might be, those pauses can be very, very helpful. I think some of that shift in excitement towards enjoying my flaws or excitement for discovering my flaws, or let me start that over. I find it fascinating that because I have switched my goal, purpose, the value that I drive from this 100-day challenge as a doing the thing and a learning experience rather than expecting some sort of outcome, whether it be a certain number of clients, certain number of views, certain number of followers. It allows me to let go of that perfection mindset and understand and realize that perfect, quote unquote, right? I don't like using perfect, but like perfect is just doing it. Recording it, as long as I record 45 minutes, like that's perfect. Whatever happens after that, as far as like how many clips I get out of it, how good the clips do, different things like that, that is completely irrelevant to the goal, right? Because the goal is recording and posting 45 minutes of content every day and however many clips I get. So I think that's a really cool thing. And I think we need to remember that a lot more as we're embarking on new endeavors, reaching new levels of growth, whether it's personally, in our business, different things like that, is being very cognizant of knowing where you get your value from and aligning your goals with those values, right? So a great example for me is I am not really money motivated. Obviously you need to pay your bills and you want to do some extra things, stuff like that. But I have, the time when I was making the most, I was also the least happy because the way in which I was making money, I wasn't enjoying. I wasn't doing the things that I liked doing that I was really good at and trying to do a bunch of other things that I wasn't good at and didn't want to do simply because I believed that I should want this higher level of monetary success, right? Whereas in reality, what I value is understanding things, tinkering with things, creating, building, right? Like very much of that hacker mindset, that craftsman mindset, doing the things, right? The money that I get from it is a byproduct and, I hope it's enough to live, but it really goes back to that kind of whole idea of if money weren't an object, what would you want to do, right? And I think it's super hard for us to detach that because I have been telling myself for the last 2 years that I'm going to launch this content offer and I just needed to, save up this amount of money or do these other things first or get to this point with this client or get to that point with that client or whatever it was. And, for 2 years it never manifested because I thought I needed to have these other things in place first. And that's not true. It's when I really sat down and looked at what I valued and what I get validation from, you know, I realized that was all external validation I was looking for of other ways that people thought I should live my life and the things that they wanted for me and the things that they thought I would be best at and, all of that kind of stuff. And when I stopped looking at that and looked for the internal validation and what made me excited and things I enjoyed and things that I knew I was good at to the point where I could charge a fair amount for the value that I brought, it made this really easy, right? It took me 2.5, I really, I can't say it's like probably 10 years, right? I've known since the very beginning that I started this that I need to create more content. And I have, throughout that course of time, made efforts and tried to create some content and written some things, all that stuff. But I never stuck with it or really even did it or felt like I should do it because I was holding on these external ideas of value and validation of, having a certain level of success with income, business, client results, anything like that. And it wasn't in alignment with what I want to do or who I want to be, right? So I finally realized I don't need that amount of money to do this. I already have enough, I already have the skills that I need. I've been doing this for long enough. Why not just do it, right? I think that kind of goes back to some of the identity stuff that I've talked about before. Whereas we have that, such a strong social pull to remain in this identity that someone holds of us out of fear of losing them, because if we change, then we will no longer be part of that group. We look at that as death in a way. I definitely do. I know for sure that. And the reality is there are other tribes, there are other communities, there are other identities that people already have that you want to be. Kind of losing my thought on this. I think we're just going to chalk that up to an unfinished thought here, but it's something I've talked about quite a bit with people recently, something that's definitely on my mind, so it's something I'm definitely going to be exploring more in some of these videos as I go on. Another topic that's also been on my mind a lot is this idea, not idea, what is interesting here? Let's start there. I think a lot of us need to reframe what we consider interesting. I talk to so many people who don't create content because they don't believe that they have anything interesting to say or that they've done interesting stuff. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that too many people are watching these Instagram accounts of people who are nomads and traveling, or have reached some level of success and have these cars and mansions and stuff like that. And sure, we are generally and inherently curious and interested in beautiful places and expensive things, right? That's what society has ingrained in us, and beliefs have been given to us around that. But the other thing that people need to remember is that there are so many different ways to be interesting, right? I think a great example is Andrew Huberman and Huberman Lab podcast that he does. There's these 3 hour long podcasts by himself, just talking about all sorts of different health related stuff. And some of the content can be pretty technical. He does an amazing job of putting in lay terms where, us without huge neuroscience or whatever backgrounds he's going into can understand it. And people find it interesting. And this is a guy who's just, sitting here in a room, camera on him, microphone in front of him, black background. That's majority of his content, right? He's not posting beautiful places that he's traveling to or exotic cars or anything like that. Simply being obsessively passionate and curious about topics is interesting and interesting enough, right? Back when I was big into weightlifting and powerlifting and looked like I worked out, I had so many people that would come up to me and, ask me about weightlifting or training or nutrition and stuff, right? Simply because it looked, that was interesting to them. I looked interesting because I worked out and did all this. That's a terrible example and not the one that I wanted to use. Okay, so here, let's go back to the travel example. I think this is a great example of it's possible to be interesting without having to travel to interesting locations and post videos and pictures of you in these amazing cool locations, right? And what you can do, let's say you have a 9 to 5 and you're 2 weeks of vacation a year, right? Well, plan that vacation of that cool place that you want to go to, 3 months away, 6 months away, 9 months away, whatever you need for a time frame, right? And now that whole time, rather than just waiting for that vacation to come, start researching what you want to do, the local people, the local traditions, the local food, all that stuff. Spend that whole time, spend your time researching that and posting about that on your social media. Just your experience discovering this area and learning about this area before you go to. And if you try that, you're going to have a ton of interesting content that you can post that has, that will never show a single scene of your actual vacation, right? And then now you're even more excited. People are probably going to be excited about this trip. And now you can start, when you actually go on the trip, cool, now you have great, cool photos and videos and stuff like that. And you can post that for a little bit. And then you have content that you can post that's a recap, right? What you learned, what was great, do reviews of the different places that you experienced and saw and stuff like that. And now move on to the next vacation, right? And just repeat that and just repeat that and just repeat that. And, you might have a knack for it. People might just be like, oh my God, I love the way that you research and talk about this stuff. And that second trip, now people are asking, hey, can I come with you? Can I pay you to take me around and show me all this? Or maybe it takes 2 years. Maybe it takes 5 years. Who knows, right? All of our timelines are different, and all of our timelines are based on the effort that we want to put towards that endeavor. Um, I think if you can step back and think about that and reframe your perspective and your thinking of what's interesting and don't limit it so much to doing these physical things out in the world, right? Whether it's going hiking or any of that other stuff. Um, Simply researching about the topic like Andrew Human does and talking about it is enough. Is enough. What else? Oh, that goes into keeping with the travel example, people want your unique perspective and message, right? We could say the same thing to the same group of people and it'd be taken totally different. Part of them are going to want to work with you, part of them are going to want to work with me, part of them aren't going to want to work with either of us. That's just life. That's how it goes. And the travel industry is a really, really great example of that. I have two friends who are both in the travel, right? One puts on a certain kind of experience, like one values like really experience like the local food and the cuisine and the community and getting to do all those like local immersion things and staying away from the touristy stuff and more like going to the smaller villages and seeing what life is really like and the real traditions and things like that. And then this other woman, the trips that she puts on are all based around like adventures. It might be mountain biking or skiing, snowboarding, or different things like that that are more physically intense and physically demanding that have, not really much to do with culture and the community. Like they might see it, but it's probably going to be a very specific part of the community that's also, the local adventure sports people. They're going to be spending more time in nature, so it's not going to be really about seeing people. They're going to be biking all day or hiking all day or snowboarding all day, so they're not really going to be going out and exploring the local communities and hanging out with them. They're going to be tired at the end of the day. And both of these trips are worth doing, right? And they're worth putting on because there are people who value each of those experiences, right? And, a lot of people who value one experience don't value the other. There's going to be some overlap and some people who value both experiences, which is a great lead into dropping the competition mindset. We'll get back to that in just a second. But essentially, we could be going to the same, like these two people could stand up in a room, be going to the same destination and being like, hey, this is my trip. This is my trip. Two completely different audiences that are going to want to go on those trips, right? And that lack of competition mindset is if you think that you are competing with that other travel agent, you're going to totally blow up your business, right? Because you're going to start to do things like they do it, and try to copy them or mimic them or be like, oh, I wonder what's working with them. And the reality is like, what works for them won't work for you because you're talking to a very different person. But if you have this collaborative mindset, come together with them, maybe make them a content buddy, now you both can share your own experiences about going to the same places, or you can do like hypotheticals of, hey, this, each week we're going to come on and pick a different place that we would go to and put together an itinerary of what we would do there and compare them and talk about them, right? So you have that's creating content. And also now you have audience overlap because there is going to be that group of people that love to travel and both want to see community and adventure, right? So some of the people from the one audience might come on your next trip because they're ready for an adventure one, and vice versa. Another thing too, if you drop that competition mindset and learn to work together with people, you might be able to co-plan a trip where part of it is the adventure side of it. The other part is the culture and community side of it, right? And you might do one day here, one day of each, back and forth, right? Do an adventure, have a chance to kind of like relax and see the city. Do an adventure, have a chance to relax and talk to people. Or however, right? It might be 2 days in the city, then you go trek up into the mountains for 2 or 3 days, and then you come back down to the city for a day. There's so many different possibilities and ways that you can work together with people within your industry that it's terrible that we still see competition, right? I don't think there's, unless you are a commodity industry where it's just, do the thing as cheaply as possible and find new ways to cut costs, you can offer it cheaper. Like, yeah, competition is going to be a thing, but pretty much all of us that are service based, experience based, coaching, all that kind of stuff, like we really don't have competition. We really don't, because so much of the things that we buy in these arenas and realms are almost 100% personal preference, right? You know, every purse works and is effective, but what's your purpose of the purse, right? Like a mom cares about having a big purse, a different kind of mom still cares about having a big purse but is also a major fashion brand. Another mom couldn't care at all and just likes keeping a wallet. Some men like to have the crossbody bags, which are purses. Some don't. All of our stuff, so much of our stuff is highly personalized to our preference, and that's such a weird thing, isn't it? Like, and I think maybe that's where a lot of our problems are coming in from society, is we have this weird tension between individuality and the group, right? Because up until really the last 20, 30, I guess until like car travel really became like everybody having cars, right? Call it like 70s, 80s. That's when people really could travel distances and move away and stuff like that. We lost that kind of identity with the community and the tribe and, like the immediate members. And now we have options to really do whatever we want, right? Like, we don't have to accept the beliefs and norms of the place that we grew up. We can move to wherever else we want to and have those. And now we're at a point where we don't even need to move. All we have to do is hop online, pull up our phones, and we can be part of any community that we want and have any identity that we want, And there's a lot of people online who have different pseudo or anonymous identities for different communities that they're involved in. It's just fascinating. And that kind of goes into another topic that I've been thinking about recently, is like, I think one of the secrets or the keys to living a life that you enjoy is wanting what you actually want. I believe a lot of our wants and desires were given to us without our permission by people who had the best intentions for us, right? So it's such a weird thing to, for example, like most parents, they don't want their kids to be entrepreneurs, right? In my early 20s, when I told my parents I was going to do all this for several years, they would make the comment of, oh, we wish you could just, get a stable job, have a 401k, have health insurance. It's all we want. We love that for you. And, like, we think that's the best route you should go. Of course, like when I'm struggling and not making money as I'm trying to do this entrepreneur thing in my 20s, as a young kid, they're like, oh, sweetie, we know, but you should probably do it this way because, we're older, And I don't say that with any malice or anything like that. I think that's a perfectly natural thing and something that we all do to all the people we care about and love. Like, how often, do you give unsolicited advice? I know I do all the time. I give unsolicited advice because I think I know better about how someone should handle a situation or things like that. So I think it's a very natural thing for us to do as humans. I think, at least what has helped me, is whenever I feel like I want to give that advice, I do two things. First, I ask if someone is open to hearing hearing about it. Two, I spend a lot of time thinking about ways in which my own life I can apply that, because I think more often than not, the advice that we give is more of a reminder to ourselves on something that we know we should be doing but aren't doing. Um, I think that's been really helpful and really powerful is whenever I have those thoughts come up, I take a step back and be like, okay, is that really true, or is that an area of my life that I am not as successful in as I want to be, right? Um, so I think wanting what you actually want is super important, and understanding that all the advice that people are telling you, all those beliefs and ideas and things that they've told you to want, like, is in your own best interest from their viewpoint, but it might not be in your interest, right? Only you can make that choice, and more than likely, you have spent most of your life stuffing down those wants, desires, and beliefs because someone else that you've looked up to has told you to do something different or value something different or look at something different and want something different. And it's very hard to detach that from the person, right? You can still love and value that person and respect that person for many different things, ideas, who they are and stuff like that, while also understanding that what they want for you isn't correct either. And that's okay, and once you kind of get to that point and once you can start being more truthful and honest about the things that you actually want and put that out into the world, I think life goes much better. I can definitely say that's true for myself. I know that the times in which I, like leaving social situations or conversations or activities or work, like when I'm in alignment with the stuff that I want to do and I make that known, I have a much better time, right? When I say, hey, I don't really want to go to that restaurant, how about this one instead? I have a better time, right? When I am working on projects that I actually like working on with my house, um, anything else, right? Like, I'm going off on the wrong direction here. I want to get a good clip for the gram or TikTok or wherever it's going to blow up, which it's not. But right. So that's such a fascinating thing, and it's so fun to sit here and record this content, knowing that I can, turn those into clips and just kind of thinking through all of this and like letting this kind of come out because, I know for me personally, it's something where I have done enough video editing that I can see where people are making clips and doing that and like have taken parts of a conversation from like different areas to put it together. So it's always kind of fascinated me to not fascinating. Like I'm always curious to see like what the actual like raw behind the scenes is. And more so to right. Okay, so here's an interesting thing that I just learned about myself. Right. I I find it very helpful to see the ways in which, other people struggle or, don't, like struggle with things, right? Because, I have that perfection mindset. So like my initial thought is always like, oh, you see this great clip on social media and you're like, wow, they probably did that in one take just off the top of their head and oh my God, this is crazy, right? When in reality, maybe that 30-second or 1 minute clip is actually, 10 to 15 minutes of raw video where they went through the same hook 10 times before they said it right, each of these parts doing a bunch of different times before they got right, and all you see is that final product, right? I think that's something that really gets not misconstrued. Something that's often forgotten with the internet is the fact that it's all edited, right? Pretty much everything you see online is edited and not necessary, real, and accurate representation, especially with all this video stuff. And most of these people who have really put together online presences and great videos and stuff like that, they are still sitting there behind the scenes, spending hours trying to make that, and screwing up and doing different things. And because we don't really get to see that part of the process, that behind the scenes, it, at least for me, that I have noticed in the past is like, I get into that negative mindset of like, oh my God, like I'm not that good. Like, why would anybody listen to me? Like, I just shouldn't do it. And obviously that's not an effective or useful belief, right? Instead, putting the content out that I want to put out because I want to put it out is a better belief, because I know that over time it will get better, right? Like this video, I feel like hasn't been as good, which is, like how do you define good, right? I haven't felt, and feeling is a terrible way. Like I noticed that like my thoughts are not quite as coherent as they have been the last couple of videos, which, it's like, oh my God, I'm 4 days in and it feels like I'm getting worse. My best video was, or my first video was better than this. What's going on? It's like, no, like it will come. And there is some, if one person gets benefit out of seeing me ramble through, this long form YouTube, or even just skipping around, or, whoever, that's fine. That's great. Maybe that inspires them. Maybe that gives them the insight that they needed to finally start making their own content, right? Like the reason I finally started making my own content is, because of certain different insights, and a lot of that is to do with Alex Hormozi's content that he's put out and how he's talked about his own journey. And, me sitting there going, wow, I started in business at the same time as this dude in the fitness industry, by opening a gym. He's all the way up here. I'm over here. What did he do differently and what can I learn? I think that's important to do. And I think, when you can drop your ego with that and realize that, it's just a lack of skill development, nothing more. And if you put the time in, you will get better, right? And I know that everything that I've put my effort, energy, and focus to, I've gotten better at. So why shouldn't I with this? And the other benefit too is in the beginning, as I'm figuring out my voice and what I'm saying and getting better at talking, doing all this, not many people are going to see it, right? The videos get 100 views, 200 views, 1,000 views, right? Like, that's tiny. That's tiny, right? And they're probably going to forget because we see so much other stuff. So it's okay. It's okay. And we just got to keep going. And we just got to keep putting more stuff out there and working on those skills. Yeah, and that's okay, so kind of lead into probably the final little bit for this video is, for a long time I kind of completely disregarded age, right? I had that mentality of, being this super smart young whippersnapper, and all these older people, they just, they didn't understand this, that, and the other thing. But as I've gotten older, I have started to realize there are certain things. Hold on, let me start that over. The older I get, the more I realize that there are certain things that are only possible to know and understand by being alive that long, right? And you, one of the biggest realizations is that the time is going to pass anyways, right? The year is going to be, pretty soon it's going to be 2025. The time is going to pass. What are you going to do at the time, right? I can do anything I want with my time, within reason. I don't like where I was trying to go with that. Right. So the time is going to pass anyways, and the older I get, the more that I realize that certain things can only be understood from being alive longer. And one of the big ones is that timepiece, right? I used to think, oh my God, like it's never going to be summer break, right? And now I'm like, holy crap, summer's like around the corner, even though it's what, 2.5 months away, kind of thing. Um, it's just like, wow, very different perception of time now. And I know by being alive for 34 years that, yeah, shoot, I'm definitely going to have to come back to this one, right? I'm not really sure. So we're going to drop that now. We're going to just kind of see if okay, so here's where it kind of finally also clicked too with creating the content, finally doing my own offer, getting away from the freelancing stuff. It's like, what do I really have to lose? Except for time, which is going to pass anyways. And why not spend that time and energy towards something that I'm really excited about and want to do versus anything else? Because at the end of the day, if I do this 100 days of content and completely bombs and I get absolutely no, and everybody's just like, oh, you did a terrible idea, I don't want to, blah, 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 whatever. What am I out? Right? What am I out? I can always get a job, or I can always get more project work or do freelance stuff again. So that's not a big deal. I don't know. You don't really lose anything. God, this is definitely, I'm going to have to spend more time thinking on that. I guess the last thing that I'll hopefully possibly get in here, the last thing I want to say is, once I finally understood whose opinion I thought mattered but didn't, is really, really when I was able to see again. Maybe I'm gonna say that. I think today I'm just gonna chalk up to I did it, right. My mind is all over the place. I've got so many different ideas on things I want to talk about and do. I have some cool stuff that I'm working on for a client that I'm really excited about and really want to get into, and my brain is just not quite there on the content side. So I'm happy that I did this and I put this, I'm putting this out there, simply because it's just about getting the reps right now. And I know that tomorrow I'm going to come back and I'm going to do more, and it'll get better. And another day I might not get better, and that's okay, because you have to do all of that, right? I remember when I was working out very regularly, you'd go through these periods where you just push yourself, and eventually my performance would degrade, right? And I knew I had to back off, and that's okay, because that meant there was some growth coming. So, understanding that you will never, you aren't always going to set PRs. Sometimes you have to just get the reps in, even if it's going to be lower quality, and understand that the point isn't to have the best workout every single time. The point is to stack a bunch of workouts together, right? Or string a bunch of workouts together. I don't know. We're going to note that down and maybe come back to that tomorrow. So, and the last thing is, it feels good to be okay with this not being perfect and not feeling anxiety or wanting to redo it or not wanting to get it out there. I am actually kind of excited to put this one out there, simply because I know that this is a struggle for a lot of people as far as creating content, and something that I've heard over and over again, which is also, I think, why my whole Content Buddy system is a great idea and why I'm super excited for that, because I had a great conversation with a friend last night, and another great conversation with another friend this morning, where I just talking about awesome things, and it was coming out and making good points, all that stuff, and it was so much easier than talking to this camera right now. So I think I think that's just gonna be it for today. I'll be back tomorrow because the whole point of this is to keep playing the game.